I just found out we first met 22 years ago at a small college in Boston. Yoky was a student in robotics at the time, did an unbelievably great thesis in robotics with a very famous person, Rod Brooks, then moved on, got a MacArthur Genius Award, something I can't even spell, became a very world-famous professor of computer science at the University of Washington, then moved to Silicon Valley and together with Astro Teller, who was on the series before, and myself, founded Google X, moved to one of the early employees at Nest, sold Nest to Google, then took some time off, I guess, and returned to Nest and is currently the Nest CTO. Welcome on the program.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian.
It's great seeing you.
Yeah, what an honor, thanks.
Do you remember 22 years ago?
Tried to erase it, but yes. I still remember you walking in the hallway at this small university in Boston, yes.
So you've had this very rare career situation where you were really a top-notch professor and then ditched out of academia and became a top-notch executive here in Silicon Valley. What did you learn?
Have you asked that to yourself?
Just
kidding. I'd like to copy your answer, actually, but what did I learn? I think when I was in academia, the places where I wanted to really excel was something that changes the world 30 years from now. And that was really important. And then, I had this itch that I couldn't quite scratch in being a professor where I wanted to affect people, change and improve lives of people sooner than waiting that long. So just coming to Silicon Valley and having the ability to do that, I learned a ton from doing that. That's just a whole lot of different skill sets to do that.
Hypothetically, if you were to go back to a professor position, what would be different?
Wow, what do you mean by that?
Like, would you be a different professor, teach differently? Would you educate students differently? Would you be more theoretical, less theoretical?
Yeah, and partly I got older, right? So I kind of know a little bit more about what they should be expecting. But yeah, I would absolutely teach students differently, not just from the coming from school to another school and then just getting into research, but really how to apply things that they learn in school and then put that back into the whole education system. So I would teach it differently.
That's nice.
Yeah.
You also almost became a professional tennis player, is that correct?
Yeah, a long time ago. That's even longer ago than 25 years ago.
That's true, we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
So you look back at the time, are you happy not to be a tennis player today?
I'm not sure. I think if I was 15 again, would I still try to become a professional tennis player? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't change the course because by thinking that I was going to become a professional tennis player, so I really thought that was all I was going to do all my life. I didn't think of anything else. I thought going to college is not about school but about tennis. That's really what I thought. So going through it that intensely taught me skills that I still use to date on everything else that I do. So I would not change anything. Competitiveness, mental toughness, all this recovering from injuries, all those things are so hard. And then in life, like whether we're professors or students or execs in Silicon Valley, we run into kind of similar situations over and over.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true, and you're very good at it. I want to ask you a personal question, if I may. So you worked at Nest and oversaw and were involved in the acquisition of Nest to Google, and then at some point you actually made a public announcement. You decided to leave Nest and go to Twitter and work with Alex Rudder, a person who's now working coincidentally with me, turns out.
Good guy.
And then you had an illness, and you made a very public posting about this actually, and it really changed your trajectory afterwards. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, so I don't usually talk about my sort of life-threatening event as much, so thanks for bringing it up. But it's actually it's something that really changed me. So this was about 2 years ago. I was going along thinking, just like everybody else, that I could do anything. My life will last for a long time. And then, I basically had an event where I realized that that's not true. It could end much sooner than I thought. And it really changed me in terms of what I focus on, to even sort of internally reflect on who I am, and also what I want to do for the rest of my life moving from that point onward. It's really humbling. I think since then, I'm it's really less about me. It's a lot about society. It's a lot about how it's like a second chance. Now I've got second chance. There must be a reason that I'm here, that I want to give back as much as possible. And I think it's a really good feeling.
That's great. That's great. I mean, thanks for sharing this with us. I lost my sister to a life-threatening disease about a month ago, so I can feel a little bit of it. But I sometimes think we are very, very grateful that we can just be here any moment, every day. It's just really great.
Yeah, it really
You
is.
must feel the same way, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, now after the personal question.
No,
On Udacity Talks, we always have our students ask questions, and we have so many amazing students. I would say there's very few people to whom I look up as much as I look up to Yoky, after not just being one of the toughest fighters I know, and one of the most warm-hearted people I know, but also that you've been a superstar in academia, a superstar in a company, and you're still an approachable human being. It's just really amazing. You also, I know you're raising 4 children and so on, and you're doing amazing things for women in computer science, which I'm going to ask about later and so on. So it's great to have you here. And of course, one of the most creative geniuses in the world, I should say.
Oh, come on.
Absolutely, having worked with you.
You could put a mirror right here and just speak to yourself over here.
No, I always admire people whose IQ is higher than me by such a large margin. But let me ask questions from the audience. Some of them are NES specific and some are more career focused or industry focused, because you're so much at the pulse of what's happening here in Silicon Valley. Morgan asked a question about home automation, which of course is the core of NES business. Do you see home automation having a role enabling care for senior citizens or for disabled people? It's a good question.
Yeah. Oh, so actually Nest has a mission and mission statement, and I'm sure Udacity does too. And then one of the things that, so Nest's mission is to create a home that cares for people inside it and the world around it. That's a huge reason that I'm back. I'm really wanting to care for people in some capacity. And then I thought about it and said, where's a good place that I can care for people? And you know, we spend so much time at home. Well, maybe about half of our lives. Well, actually more than that. Maybe 2/3 of our life, but the half that you're sleeping. So, but you know, quite a lot happens at home. And you know, in order to care for people in the right way, what a great place to do, you know, from Nest angle. So absolutely. And all age groups, all different shapes and, you know, of people live in the home. I love to, you know, my research also was in neurobotics, where we tried to build devices for people with disabilities, neural and physical disabilities. So I really hope that we get to connect that really nicely in the future, whether it's for the elderly or, you know, younger people or people with disabilities. So absolutely.
I mean, raise a question, which I look at Silicon Valley as a whole. We invent all these great technologies. One part of the society we kind of seem to almost entirely neglect is actually the aging population. Is this because the Mark Zuckerbergs and Larry Pages are very young? Or like, why don't we, I mean, there seems to be such a great opportunity to go after technology that keep people independent longer and work with their degrading whatever physical and cognitive and perceptual capabilities. Yeah,
no, I agree. So I think I've thought about this a lot.
I know.
So I think a couple of things. I mean, this is oversimplifying, and there are a whole lot more complexity to it. One, as you said, the innovators are too young, and then by the time we really think of the right solution and pain points for the older people, we're too old to do that right thing, right? So I think there's one part to that. I think it's really hard for us to. Please get old really fast so that we can do the innovation. No, but yeah. So I think, you know, I think that's definitely one thing. But the other part is the whole economy of us needing to make money, right? I think that people who adopt to technology really fast are not the elderly. So we tailor it to the place where a Silicon Valley company can make the most amount of money, and turns out that's not the elderly market. And also, elderly specific technology doesn't sell, because as we get older, we'll never admit that we're getting older, right? We would never buy something that's tuned for the elderly because we don't believe it.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think that's another reason that, you know, I think I bet the way we enter the elderly market in many ways is to not build something very tailored for the elderly, but for everybody that works here, turns out to be really, really helpful for the elderly.
It's a great answer. It's a great answer. Savaria asked a question about Nest. This is going to be a Udacity-specific question. What does a company like Nest look in for in a candidate? And she says, or he or she, I know of people who say that companies like these don't hire anyone below a GPA of 3.5. For international students, GPAs are a grade point average. 4 is really good. 3.9 sucks. Oh, sorry, not quite as good.
Yeah. So what was the question again?
So what do you look in the candidate? What excites you about a candidate?
So in terms of the GPA, I mean 3.5, I don't even know where that number came from. To be honest, I didn't have it, and I work at Nest, so apparently I passed the bar. Right? So
but you were acquired, you weren't hired.
Huh?
Originally you were acquired.
Come on. No, they hired me first. Yeah, okay. So keep that clear. The record is clear, I was hired. No, but yeah, so I think GPA is just like a tiny fraction of everything else, right? I mean, I never asked for those questions about how well did you do in school? And that's just a little part of it. Sure, the fact that you took some of the right courses at Udacity or wherever it might have been is important. But now, what did you get out of it? How are you applying it to yourself, to the work you do, or to your life, right? And your ability to really put that in applications and work really hard and then change the world, I think all of those things are far more important than how you do in school.
Good, that's great. From John, again for Nest, what is the biggest difficulty for companies like Nest that work in both hardware and software? And how do you guys approach this? How do you solve these difficulties?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for those people who are interested in robotics or autonomous driving car, you know, so Nest is part of Google, and Google has a lot of amazing software, and then just getting into the hardware. So I see a lot of that people moving from Google to Nest, and then their struggle in finding out how to do hardware. So I think that's just, I'm also learning as well, watching them come to Nest and struggling, why hardware and software combination is hard. I think there are things that takes longer from the point that you think you conceived the idea and then you built it to the point that you can ship it is much longer for hardware software combo product. So I think that's the part, it's really hard to visualize it until you do it once. And all this, what we call it like a regression, right? Like you put software and hardware together and then both sides plan perfectly, and then the first day you merge it, everything falls apart. And some of the audience is nodding, says yes. So I think those regression, the magnitude of that occurring is far more when it's not just software.
Here's an anonymous question, which I also have, is what do you think needs to be done to make the tech culture and business more welcoming to women now and in the future?
Yes, of course, this whole women issue is very passionate for me, just trying to do it myself. But one of the things that, at least, and again, this might be generalizing again, but one of the things that women and girls, when I go and talk to high school students and junior high school students, is that they're looking for already sort of a mission or bigger picture. They're looking for a place where they feel like they can touch a lot of people's life. So when you're learning math and science as they are, it doesn't really connect to why it has meanings, why it could help people. So I think as we do more and more of that, so we make it into much more of an applications, more of a project base, right? So there are lots of schools that are really trying to do in a project-based school modes, so that math is not just math, it's not dry. But even how Udacity does it, right? It's like autonomous driving car, but you actually also teach math along the way, right? That's exactly how those things should be taught, and I think those things will bring more and more women too.
So you think it should start really at K through 12, even pre-K levels?
Totally. Yeah. Are you doing it at Udacity?
We are very much project focused. I mean, we unfortunately still have a predominant male student body, unfortunately. There's nothing I can do about it.
Why is that?
We are in the company itself, we are almost entirely balanced between females and males. Partially because we are very strongly a mission-driven company.
Yeah, mission-driven, yeah.
But I would really love to change that ratio. I mean, Udacity does a lot of work with female-only scholarship organizations and non-profits, where we hand out scholarships to women only. And now I'm thinking that the environment of online is actually much more protective in some sense and gives you more freedom than a big classroom dominated by arrogant males. But it's a long way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and
actually.
it's really important.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
There might be, so I've asked recently within Nest and Google, and then asked some women and said, why do you want to have more women? Right? And then they said, because they like the connection. They like to sit next to other women who feel like they can relate to each other. So I think that's a huge part, right? To get more women, we have to start with a little bit more women. So I think that's really important. Of course, that's hard to do, but maybe that's one of the things. Udacity-wise, it might be. Sorry, I'm not here to give advice, right? But anyway,
you are.
Because I'm thinking, like, maybe I wonder if for women, if there's a place where you can do it online, but some environment together, 3 students together, and then they're all female. You know, something like that could be really interesting.
Yeah, we have a Facebook group called Com Sisters where women get together and so on. But yeah, I mean, I'm open for any advice, honestly. I'd love to learn more. We have a very strong presence in the Middle East as our contribution to world peace. I would love to make a broad Udacity contribution to inclusiveness in the workplace, not just not female, but also ethnicities and other things that are typically unbalanced. Similar related question from a gentleman named Rai. It says, I'm over 40. Rai, you're a young chicken spring. Okay? Get that.
Spring chicken.
Spring chicken. The professor in her is coming out. Is it too late to start a career in robotics, AI, or machine learning?
Gosh, 40 is so young. Actually, my dad is 82, and he is starting a new company. And I think it's never too late, right? If your brain is excited to learn new things, go for it. I think that's why it's so worth living in so many ways, that we should just continue to learn. And if machine learning and AI is the thing right now that's going to take off, which we all believe in the next decade or two, get the skills and make sure that we do it. I think that's super exciting.
I want to point out, this was actually a really strong push towards Udacity. She didn't use the word for it, but she's really helping our company here, I hope. Right?
Sure.
Sure. You're also known to be a top-notch roboticist. And I think you picked this neurobiology thing, which was very unique at the time when you worked at UW, and even today when you talk about it. There's all these kind of thoughts about robotics, is this good or bad for humanity? Where do you position yourself in this new dialogue about artificial intelligence taking our jobs? And if I believe Elon Musk is enslaving us and turning us into chicken sandwiches.
Yes. I don't know. I mean, it's partly maybe because I know so much of the detail and, how hard it is to even get there. So maybe that's why I'm not as worried about them. But at the same time, I mean, coming from my angle of robotics, really what I'm trying to build is a way to make human life more enhanced, right? So even Nest products. Why do we build a thermostat? It's not because it looks beautiful on the wall. I mean, that was a huge part of it. But we made it beautiful so that people buy it, and then they might forget about it, but turns out they can save energy. We're making people who they want to be, because everybody says, I want to save energy. But turns out they're a little bit lazy to really do it. So we do it for them. We just made them a better person, right? So in that very similar way, as we continue, those technologies should be continued to use as an assistive way to make person, if it was a people with disabilities, and that's where the field that I started off, they lost something that they used to have, whether it's an arm or part of the brain, and then can AI, machine learning, robotics help them to get back to where they were or who they want to be? And then there's a little bit of an enhancement bit, right? Like, can they become a better musician? Can they, save energy? Some of the things that we might not be able to do naturally.
I would say my pocket radio has made me an enormously great musician. This play was on there on my phone, right? Great. Isaiah asked related questions. Why do some futurists say that robots can never mimic humans when human behavior is just a series of on and off synapses in the brain, like 0 and 1s on a computer?
Oh gosh, people ask really hard questions. Yeah, I mean, theoretically we should be on and off switches and we should be able to mimic, but there's so much to learn. I've studied brain science for years, and I've only gotten deeper. I haven't started coming back up saying, like, I think we got it, right? It's so complicated. And anyway, so I think from that point of view, one day, theoretically, it sounds like it's possible. I just can't see it yet. In 2017.
2018, 2030, 2100?
No, from the view of 2017 onward, I think the level of understanding of our brain is still just like scratch the surface a little bit. That really understanding, like if we simulated crazy amount of ones and zero switches, should it somehow become a human? I don't know.
So you'd say that even though we have this amazing progress in deep learning and machine learning, and we now have examples where learning systems outperform human Go players or chess players or lawyers or dermatologists, it's still a lot far cry from actually becoming more human-like.
Yeah, and I think we're this incredibly unique organism which happened to survive in this crazy universe, right? So many different accidental zeros and ones which became a cockroach, which is a pretty good deal actually. Or,
Unless
or
someone
just
steps on you.
they get flat and then they keep going, but yes. That's right. So I think cockroach is a pretty good deal. And then actually but the most of those zeros and ones which might have existed in this giant universe probably got extinct because they didn't quite get the ones and zeros right. So I think of all those billions and trillions of all those different iterations of cases to actually become something human-like is really, really a lucky little tiny little sliver. Maybe we'll get there one day, but again, I'm not quite there yet.
I will forever remember this conversation that cockroach is a really good deal. And next time I see a cockroach, I'll be very respectful.
Awesome.
Really changing my perspective on things.
Yeah.
Last question. Rudy asking a question about augmented reality. And it's a question with 3 different technologies. He asks, how do you see the convergence of other technologies such as augmented reality and mixed reality benefiting the future of neurobotics?
Oh, interesting. Actually, neurobotics, when I was doing research, was about having a robot, whether it's wearable or stationary, to work with human to rehabilitate them or to get them to do some function that they lost. One of the projects that I had, and I even spun an incredibly unsuccessful company on, was a stroke rehabilitation at home. So the idea was that people who have stroke, there are a lot of people who have stroke on a yearly basis, and then about 2/3 of them survive, and then those who survive, most of them end up with some level of physical disability. But they're usually a little older, and then they don't get to go to rehabilitation all the time because they're not able to take themselves to the hospital. So they don't get the opportunity to rehabilitation. So what I thought would be great is like, they can do this at home. So I built a system which was augmented reality-like environment.
Long before anybody else worked in there, I should say.
That's right. It was way too early in time.
Yes. An Oculus Rift at UW, remember?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So and then to then have a robot that they're working with, and an arm may be disabled and can't move very much, and then they're playing a game or some task-specific, thing that they're working on, and as they're doing it, because it's fun, and also we're fooling with them and then just playing with their brain a little bit in such a way that they start to move more and more. So, and then the therapists get the feedback, then everything is connected to Wi-Fi to the office. Sometimes it's real time, sometimes it's just results. So all of that is going to become a reality hopefully soon.
I think this is the time is ripe. So, I mean, now the technology is pervasive. It would be fantastic if some of our students picked it up. Last thing I wanted to just bring up, we launched a robotics nano degree, and you are a world-class roboticist, and next to being a world-class product person and CTO at Nest. Any advice for our students in robotics? What to do, what to be excited about, what to be aware of?
Interesting. So I think one of the advice is that just because you study robotics, you don't have to build a humanoid. I think a lot of people immediately imagine, if I study robotics, I have to find those 3 companies that are building a humanoid robot or something that has a face. In my mind, what you learn in a class is immediately used for so many different companies. I mean, Nest constantly hires people who have electromechanical, background with especially robotics control systems background. That's so useful. But there are so many companies now that this Internet of Things, and then so many of the hardware software combination companies are coming along. So I'd make sure that robotics is not about just a small thing, but just you can really brag about it and go out and then use it for so many things.
We're unfortunately out of time, Yoky. It's been super, super insightful, and it's great. Thanks for 22 years of friendship, and thanks for showing up here in Udacity Talks today. This is our 10th series. You can see it for the 11th very soon. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm honored. Thanks.
So I've been told that this is the time to take audience questions and fire them off. Yes.
Okay, I saw in Nest website that you have this camera that can detect strangers or people who's coming into the house. It's a crime detection thing, right? And what's Nest's position or your position into making this into like in a public space, so more like massive scale of
like a surveillance camera.
Yeah, for crime detection.
Okay, let me repeat the question, right? Okay. So what's your first name?
Jay.
Jay. So Jay from the audience asked a question. He's observed that Nest now is able to find amazing accuracy individuals when you buy a Nest Cam and understand whether it's the same person as before and detect intruders. So the question Jay asked, is there going to be a plan at Nest to go forward into really public places and turn Nest into kind of a, I hate to say the surveillance company, which is, it sounds negative, but some company that gives airports or shopping malls an awareness of the interior?
Yeah, so I mean, thanks for the question. There are so many different angles to this, but let me see if I can cover some of them. So one, yes, we launched a really beautiful camera, which has the feature which detects what we like to think as a familiar faces detection. So we know that when loved ones come home and then there'll be a notification about, Sebastian just came home. That's sort of how the feature works. But of course, as a byproduct, as you thought about it, and says, wait, if they're not part of the family members, then there might be strangers. Absolutely. And then, hopefully that's going to save some people's homes in the future as well. And I think that would be exciting. And so I think that's that. But then the question of would we want to go and outside of the house? Of course, our core promise of Nest is to create a home that takes care of people inside and a world around it. There's a world around it, though. So, but we really try to focus around people's home as much as we can. Are we going to go outside? We'll probably consider it. Are we going to really become the surveillance company? I don't know.
Another question. Yes, and what's your first name?
My name is Chris.
Chris.
So you guys talked about jobs, right? And so all these new technologies like self-driving cars, they are going to create a lot of jobs, but more like 10 to 15 years out from now. But now, while the process is happening during the transition time, the jobs are going to be squashed, right? Is there a humane way of dealing with that? And that's one. And the second question is Silicon Valley really responsible for that? Or is it government should take care of that?
So Chris is asking a question that is based on a hypothesis which you have voiced to us, which is self-driving cars and these new technologies create jobs, but it's going to start creating jobs 15 years from now. And in between there's going to be a trough where we lose jobs. And his questions were to Yoky, is there a humane way to deal with this? And secondly, somewhat provocative, I should say, is it Silicon Valley's fault? Are we responsible for this? Yoky, I'm so glad you answered the question, not me.
The whole weight of the valley is on top of me now. So yeah, again, thanks for the questions. I mean, these are really important things that we all should be discussing moving forward. And this is really not a promo for Udacity, but the way I think about it is that we're going to create new types of jobs, right, that just currently doesn't exist. And if we look 10, 15 years from now, as you said, there's some new job increase that's going to happen. We have to get those people ready, right? So the kind of education currently is completely tailored for the current society with no technology. So what are the next sets? Like the fact that you offer this autonomous driving car course, I mean, you are getting people ready to create those, but why not create additional courses and degrees which prepares people to be able to work in a totally different skill set?
Well, we're trying to do this, to be honest. We have in digital marketing and many other fields that are digitally enabled work fields where we can bring students new skills. And
sure.
Yeah, I think, my take would be the change of pace is accelerating. So the pace of change is accelerating. So things are moving faster and faster than ever before. And we live longer than ever before. And that to me really mandates that we as society are willing to stay educated over a lifetime, not just once in a lifetime.
Yeah, so that's
question
great.
here.
Hey, so you talked about serving the elderly and their needs. So a broader question would be, right now I feel the money lies in problems which, self-driving cars and all is great, but there are certain problems which are not able to solve because there's not much of money there or glamour there. So how do you feel we can cater to that problem? How do we make brilliant minds focus on such problems as well, just like you're pointing to?
You're talking about elderly as an example? Or
elderly as an example. There are other social problems which we have.
Like
Like poverty, could say.
Poverty. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Good.
If brilliant minds focus on such problems, I think we can come up with a solution.
Good. What's your name?
Girish.
Garish. So Garish's question is an excellent one. I really like this. He points out that a lot of money goes into like first-class problems, like making your phone shiny or whatever it is. And he points out correctly that there's many important problems like poverty or maybe clean drinking water that don't seem to attract the same amount of energy because there seem to be less financing and less payment available for solving those problems. So he's asking Yoky, how can we get brilliant people like herself focus more on these kind of problems?
Great question. And then actually, again, after my life-changing event, I think about this all the time. So I think there are two, again, there might be many ways to do this. There are two trends that I see. One is the foundation approach, right? So Bill Gates, when you said about the water, I thought about that and says, he said, I got lucky and then built a Microsoft, and now I want to give a lot of money to really this part, which doesn't get a lot of attention. And those folks are run by real business people. They're really brilliant people running Gates Foundation, right? So I think it's not that those people who are getting paid very little as at Gates Foundation. So I think they're doing it pretty well. Mark Zuckerberg, of course, started a foundation related to science and, just really advancing that in a way that's going to, again, hopefully benefit people who don't usually benefit from the Silicon Valley typical companies and making the phone shiny. So that's one area. And I also have a nonprofit on the side, which I also got frustrated with the fact that I could not build a company that would make money to build devices for people with disabilities, because I will never make money. So this whole idea of the nonprofit is to build things for people utilizing the talent in wherever I am at. So Silicon Valley here, when I was at Seattle, I was building talents from Seattle to build things for people and then give them out for free. Right, so I think those are great things that we can do. That's number one. The number two is to have more and more mission-driven way of thinking about things, right? So companies, I'm very mission-driven. I work for a for-profit company, but I really try to ground ourselves as much as possible to balance the revenue as well as the mission correctly, right? I think those things are really important. And also balance the thinking, right? So that if we all are thinking mission-driven, then when we build things, we make sure and says, you know what, we're primarily selling for the mass to make money, but we made sure that it works for the elderly, it works for the poor, right? Like there are different ways of making sure that we're covering as much of the ground as possible. And maybe we can even have a system we can give those devices for much less money. We don't have to make money off those. Google has the .org, which has a lot of good intention for that. So there are so many different ways of hopefully doing it. It's not enough though, it's absolutely not enough yet.
So name is Sasha, and
okay, Sasha.
My question is, right now at places like Nest or Waymo, there are people with like 20 years of experience in computer vision or machine learning, and yet they're facing tremendous challenges. And on the other hand, like we, like a lot of us here, have only picked computer vision like last year or next month. So how are we going to meaningfully contribute to what they're doing?
So here's the question from Sasha. You observed correctly that if you go to established tech companies like Waymo and others, that a lot of the engineers have maybe a decade or more of experience in something like computer vision.
Yeah.
And I assume you're studying at Udacity something related to computer vision.
Yes.
So Sasha studies self-driving cars at Udacity, and as a result does deep learning and wonderful things, but is worried if he enters the work field, his experience might be half a year in total or a year in total. And how can he, as a newcomer to the field, contribute to a field that has so many seasoned veterans?
And so many challenges for them.
Yeah. So thanks for the question. It's interesting. I actually think that myself as well as the company tries to have this balanced as much as possible. So people who have 20-year experience is expensive. We don't really want to hire those people only. We want to make sure that people we hire will get trained and love the experience and will forever stay at wherever I'm at to, just we can nurture them, take them early because they got huge talent that's coming up, right? And then we can bring them to become who we would love to continue to work with. So I think all that process is there. I agree that there are a lot of people, I think historically too, like Waymo's been around for about 10 years, so there are a lot of people who entered with a maybe 1 to 5 years of computer vision experience now has long experience. But I'm not too worried about that. I think, you know, Udacity's program, and on the level of experience, Udacity, I hope, thought very carefully about exactly the right kind of data, the experience and the class sets that's needed to be able to enter a place like Google and Waymo and be valued.
Yeah, I want to add my personal answer to this, Sasha. I actually have a bias against veterans and against experts. And whenever I start something, be it Udacity or self-driving cars or whatever I do, I don't hire experts. I categorically, so the self-driving car team at Google started without a single person without any experience in the field of automotive, even though there's tens of thousands qualified automotive engineers. And the reason is, experts tend to be experts of the past, not the future. And our technologies change so rapidly that it's a really good risk to get stuck in one generation of technology and not being able to move to the next one as an individual. So I almost have the opposite hiring bias. Take self-driving cars. When I started the Google team, deep learning had not yet seen its prime day, and machine learning was an esoteric discipline that no one believed in. So we built an architecture that was very geometric. It was very much driven by, let's really understand the x, y, z coordinates of any obstacle and the delta of x, y, z to understand where it's going. And that's the core, essentially, of that approach. And then deep learning came along. Of course, I don't know what Waymo is doing today, but I see all the new companies right now starting with the deep learning as the core discipline in self-driving cars and making unbelievable progress, more than I could make back in the day with geometric reasoning. When you hire veterans, I would argue to anybody, really check whether they're open-minded and whether they're willing to move on, understand that the paradigm is shifting. It's shifting in every discipline. It's shifting even in software engineering, right? There was this New York Times article yesterday about how so many students cheat by copying code. I think you should copy code. In software engineering today, it's mostly you copy-paste or integrate into API science. When I grew up, some software engineering was write every single line from scratch, right? And if you did assembler, every typo would give you different behavior, wouldn't even be caught by your compiler. So it's these things change so fast. I think if you're smart about it, as a newcomer, you actually have an advantage in these days. That's my opinion. Let me a footnote. There's something that we don't teach very well at Udacity yet, which is working in teams and building large software systems. That's probably where experts have a bit of an advantage today if you have experience in this. And it's on my list right now to enhance this in Udacity, so when students like yourself come out, you have more of an experience in building large software systems. Anyhow, with that, I want to close. No, I did some of the talking. Again, it's great having you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your answers.
Yeah.